There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things, history and science and some crazy shit. Talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird-ass show. Ooh, insanity abounds. Ooh, the world is spinning round. Now we're gonna break it down.
But in any case, I'm Nick.
You're also out of order.
Jesus Christ, because we can't ever change anything?
Nope.
We got one over
Never.
here complaining that we're not starting. I tried to get us back on track, and that's how it goes. You know what? Welcome to Informed and Confused. This is the show.
I don't think I can do the show under these conditions.
Welcome to Season 3, everybody.
It just doesn't feel right.
And this is how we apparently start, everybody. Welcome to Informed and Confused. I'm Ben.
I'm Nick, and I mean, I'm not opposed to this methodology.
I'm Alan.
He sounds pretty
I should be Alan before Nick, but okay, I guess I'm Alan after.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, I take back my introduction. Your turn.
Which one? There were two of them.
Both.
Thank you.
And on to round 3. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Informed and Confused. I'm Ben.
I'm Alan.
And I'm ready to get on with this.
Much better.
So what are we actually talking about today? You guys brought me a topic?
You know, I'm gonna offer up a few, and we're gonna pretend that we don't actually plan this and that you don't know what we're talking about, and you're gonna guess. Today's topic is the origin of the term private eye. They were Chicago's first private policing agency, and they were hiring female individuals for police and detective work at a time when women could not even vote.
Cool.
You would think.
I mean, I've always been a fan of old detective stories and things like that, and
Well, these
nice
these
to
aren't.
know where this all originates from.
These are pre-noir detectives. These are cowboy detectives.
Oh.
They play a prominent role in the popular game Red Dead Redemption 2. Alan, would you care to clue our co-host into what we're talking about today?
We are talking about the Pinkerton Detective Agency.
I was not even aware they started all the way back then. Of course, I don't play Red Dead Redemption, so...
The official start date for them is...
50-something, right?
Yeah, 1850. 1850. Yes,
Yeah.
1850.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's...
So,
that's us getting...
They're coming up on 200 years.
Yes, and they still exist. Like a lot of people think that they are just like an old Westy thing, like they went the way of the dodo around the time of the World Wars. No.
Well, detective is a thing that I don't think will ever be a term
they're
that
actually
is retired.
Actually, they're not really a detective agency anymore.
Aren't they?
Mostly now they just do private security.
Private security in a very specific way, though. They're not what you're thinking. You can't like rent security guards from them. You rent like data analysts from them.
Oh, okay.
They're spies. Like it's yeah.
So they stopped being detectives about the time when the FBI became a thing. Redundancy.
I would say well before that, honestly. I'd say right around the turn of the century, there's a large change in the organization in terms of their overall character that was started even before then. Like they started representing just a private industry more so than any sort of policing body after a certain point. Like at this point, they don't represent or look like detectives because they're not, and they haven't for like 100 years. There's no reason to expect them to. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves by trying to stay current. So instead, let's go to
tell us about the 1800s.
Let's go to where all terrible things in life begin, Glasgow in the 1800s. Born in 1890, Allenton Pinkerton was born to... sorry, I spoke very terribly, but we're leaving it in because I'm an asshole and I just keep rambling. Born in 1819, Alan Pinkerton was born to a large, very poor family in the Gorbals district. I heard this name in 3 different sources. I never found it printed where he grew up. So I have I heard Gorbals. I think that's what it's called. Don't fucking at me.
Okay.
Or do if you actually know so that we can be more informed and not just confused.
I mean, okay, yeah. If you want to, like, help us, like, grow our understanding pool, that's cool. Don't be a dick. If you're just trying to, like, come and dunk us, like, oh, you don't know shit, you're more confused than you think, oh! Yeah, go fuck yourself.
I mean, it's in our name, guys. Come on.
You know, you'd think. You'd really think. Like, we're entertainment potpourri. Like, you'd think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but spent most of his young life as a illiterate cooper or a barrel maker for the uninitiated.
Oh, okay. Yep.
By all accounts, he was actually...
job back in the day.
By all accounts, he was actually a very good cooper. He did that off and on, like, through the rest of his life, and, like, it seems like at a certain point, it became, like, a weird hobby, even.
It was something he'd always known how to do, and something he could always do.
Like eventually he wasn't making them to, like, sell to anybody, but, like, he'd produce, like, a barrel a year out of, like, just sitting around with nothing to do on weekends, and he has wood, so he makes a barrel. Like, yeah, like, pretty normal dude for early 1800s British guy.
Yeah.
No. He wasn't that multi-talented.
He wasn't a shiner.
Yeah. But growing up in this type of environment, it made him a real advocate for the working class. He was referred to as a social justice warrior before that was a buzz term. Once he started getting involved in the local politics and being an adult and participating in society, that fun thing that happens to all of us in our early 20s, he became a Chartist. Chartists were a group that believed in the strength of British legal charters and named themselves very specifically after one such charter called the People's Charter of 1838. I didn't read it. Yep. Don't at me. I do know that the broad strokes of it, though, were guaranteeing basic human rights and liberties to working class individuals. Just the way I want to put it is it was dignity laws. Shit like how in this country where you work more than 40 hours, you're paying them more. No. You're taking too much of their time in life. You are paying them more, period, law. Mm-hmm. You know, that type of thing. The type of stuff that employers always fight against no matter what, and employees are always like, please? That type of thing.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Now, this organization was fairly young, but they got up to a lot fairly quickly. By 1839, they had already had leaders of the Chartist organization be targeted by the British government and imprisoned. This led to an event referred to as the March on Newport. 10,000 Chartists stormed a hotel being used as a jail for these imprisoned Chartist leaders. Pinkerton actually led parts of this charge personally, actively participating in the violence. This is a man who said, sometimes you gotta choke a bitch to get what's yours, and then went and choked a bitch. A man of action.
Yeah.
An equal opportunity, he could have choked a bastard. I don't want someone to think this is somehow engendered because that is not young Alan Pinkerton. Equal opportunity. After this event, the British authorities very quickly began rounding up the remaining Chartist leadership because although it was 10,000 strong,
you don't arrest the schmucks. You arrest the people who organize the schmucks.
Pretty much. It's similar to what's going on with the Capitol riots right now. They're arresting a fuck ton of people, but honestly, there's only ever going to be like 50 that get charged with anything at all.
Yeah.
Like,
at least serious.
Yeah. But in any case, these were the Brits in a time when criminal justice... Well, let's just say it didn't exist yet. It was.
Were they still sending people to Australia at that point?
No.
Okay.
I was about to say.
I don't remember when that.
I was about to
actually
say I
stopped.
think so, but I'm pretty sure they're allowed to leave now.
Yeah, I don't remember when that whole thing stopped.
I don't think I made it all the way to the 1850s.
That is definitely a discussion for another
there
day.
was no immigration there from the UK in that time.
Oh, there was immigration, I think, but I don't think it was still a penal colony.
Oh yeah, no, that was my point about but they're allowed to leave now.
Yeah, well, he said sending prisoners. I thought he was implying it was being used as a penal colony.
Well, that's what I was asking.
That was my
when
clarification.
that ended.
No,
But that'll
to my
be
understand-
another conversation where we talk about Australia.
Yeah, to my understanding, Australia was mostly what it was now. Fewer bullfrogs, fewer cane toads, probably more kangaroos,
Giant kangaroos.
emus, just lousy with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Couldn't even take them out with machine guns. There were so many.
They won that war.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, by 1842, things are getting really hot for young Alan Pinkerton in his homeland.
Well, you said he got arrested. Did he do
No.
jail time, or-
No. He participated in the riots against the jail. Sorry, lack of good term. The March on the Jail, he participated in that and was very public in that, was an organizer for it, was a known leader within the organization at that point. He was on the British authorities' radar, and he was slowly losing comrades at this point in time. He was losing other Chartists around him. If you were confronted with this reality, 1842 is your do or die moment. You're Alan Pinkerton. What do?
I go to fuck somewhere else.
Hop on a boat and GTFO, motherfucker.
Go to where no mistake ever counts, America. So from there,
I'm guessing he put down in Boston.
he
That was one of the main ports for Irish settlers
he
at that
probably
point.
did. I'm not actually sure because the next place that I actually rejoin him is 5 years later after he's gotten in country and gotten settled. In 1847, something very interesting happened to Mr. Pinkerton that forever changed the young Cooper's life. And I'd like to point out, he's still a Cooper at this point in time.
Right.
He's just making barrels in the New World.
Yeah.
Still a valuable skill, still a necessary skill, and that's the
He'd
trade
be
he's
about
been playing.
30 at this point?
47 from 19.
28.
Yeah,
28.
thank
Okay.
you. But
My estimate was close.
yeah, young man though, younger than any of us.
Yeah.
In 1847, while he was out looking for wood for his barrel making, he came across a counterfeiting camp.
Cool.
Now, I don't know how much either one of you really know about counterfeiting at this point in time, but
A little bit. It's always been a topic that has intrigued me just
Oh,
for the artistry beyond anything else.
the states were lousy with it at this point
Yeah.
in time for
There's
a
a
Money
variety
was
of
not
reasons.
very well at this point. Money wasn't very well protected
Lot
against
easier.
counterfeiting.
Lot
So-
easier to do.
In some instances, there were no federal laws to protect money and how it was used. In other cases, it was impossible to enforce existing federal legislation. And then on top of that, there was this thing at the time, called Wildcat Money.
Mhm.
And it's because the US dollar was not actually federally backed at the time specifically. Banks could still issue their own currency.
Yep, their own notes.
So you had random notes just going around that were treated as legal U.S. tender.
Yep.
That gets ludicrously hard to track.
A lot of banks in this time would just issue you a bank note,
yeah.
and
This-
you'd pay with that.
This also disproportionately affected immigrants as they tended to be less familiar with the local laws and currencies. And well,
the banks weren't quite as willing to work with them. And
Alan being a
yeah.
good old Glasgow boy, I bet you can guess how he felt about taking advantage of immigrants. Yeah.
So he joined up with these counterfeiters.
No, instead, he goes to the closest town, finds the sheriff, rounds up a literal fucking posse of town folk. A
Nice.
goddamn posse.
Yep.
And
Well,
they
that was the
raid
way
the
you did shit
counterfeiters
back then.
camp. I've seen some stuff about one of the counterfeiters getting shot. I saw other stuff about everybody going to court. I don't know. But I am confident they beat the ever-loving shit out of these men and then set fire to their camp.
Nice.
Yeah.
I am confident of those two things.
All right.
Okay, so he was definitely Law and Order side of.
Well, before that, not really, but this event got him an honorary position as a sheriff's deputy,
Well,
which was his entrance into law enforcement.
Yeah.
okay.
So he went from a wanted felon across the seas to
being
a
a
lawman.
Yeah.
Later on in 1849, riding the success from that initial buzz, which got a lot of press publication at the time.
Well,
It-
counterfeiters.
Yeah, no, he was kind of viewed as like sort of this small time like national, like I don't want to say national because it wasn't quite that big,
Regional.
but
Regional
a
hero,
lot of
state
people
hero.
knew who he was, knew what he did, and were like, that's a good fucking guy.
Yeah, well, at the time, doing that sort of vigilante justice was much more acceptable, and if you had the
Well, back
local
then-
sheriff backing you up, yeah, you were definitely
back then
a
it was
hero to the
necessary.
regular
Well, back
people.
then you didn't have a lot of these law enforcement agencies that you think of as just implicit nowadays. Like
Well,
back
this was
back
before
at
the
this point in time,
FBI,
back at
before
Yeah.
SWAT teams. And,
back at this
yeah.
point in time, policing in this country still resembled the British constabulary standard. At which point, a constable does not work constantly. They're not an hourly or even a salary employee. They're paid case to case.
Yep.
You pull a big case and you can feed your family for the next 8 months.
You
Fuck
do
off.
it.
I'm not going and fighting criminals for the next 8 months. I'm good.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, like, just the nature of law enforcement was completely different at this point in time, and that's something
Okay.
that we have to be able to contextualize because we live in a very different world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we live in a world where policing practice was built by the 1960 riots.
Actually,
LA.
actually, a lot of our policing habits come from Mr. Alan Pinkerton and what I'm about to go through here. Later in 1849, he became the first police detective in Chicago. It was not an extant role before this. They literally made up a new job position within the
For
city's
him.
Yep.
infrastructure for him.
In Chicago, you say?
The Chicago Police Department only exists today because of Alan Pinkerton.
Interesting.
On paper, it was not a thing.
Before he was given it.
Trying to think of the right word. Municipally.
Yeah.
Yeah, before that, it was not a thing. He was the first. He was not the first in the
Interesting.
country. The first in the country was some man from Boston. Can't remember his name. Doesn't matter. We're not talking about that jackass today. Maybe we will tomorrow. Who knows? I know. It's Thursday. We're not meeting tomorrow. Shortly after becoming the first police detective in Chicago, he rode the press and fame from that to partner with attorney Edward Ruckers, forming what would shortly become known as the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. It had two other names very briefly for less than a year before that. It's meaningless to the story because it's the same business partner, it's the same business, it's the same address. They just had some rebranding. But it's the
So,
Pinkertons.
He did that while he was currently police chief. Or
Only detective. He then hired other detectives and it became a police bureau and then eventually became just the Chicago PD, which of course has its own branch of detectives.
Yeah.
But that's because it's a police department. They all do.
okay, but
Like-
before that, it was branded as the Pinkerton Agency.
No, this
Or-
was him doing something completely separate from his policing stuff. This
Okay,
is, this is
at the same
America.
time,
He's being
but
a captain.
separate.
Yes.
Okay, that
this
was
is
what I
America.
was
He's being a
asking.
captain of industry and whipping the shit out of capitalism with a second job.
That's what I was asking, was whether this was simultaneous, before or after.
Now, starting from 1950, how long do you think it takes before he starts getting big dog clients?
Well, with his preceding fame, I'd say not very long.
And he is absolutely famous at this point in
Yeah,
time.
I'd say not very long.
If it's you're thinking of the thing I'm thinking of, 8 years.
Actually, by 1853, he was getting hired by the U.S. government for
About 3 years.
minor jobs,
Okay.
which slowly began escalating. Like, it started with very simple things like looking into counterfeiting claims because Pinkerton had a reputation for being
Well,
exceptional
that's what he got
with that.
famous for.
He had tracked down multiple counterfeiters by this point too. Like he was genuinely good at it. He had a talent for it.
He had a certain set of skills.
Yes, he did, but I doubt he ever got anyone's daughters back because Pinkerton's skills usually revolved around using a Winchester. Or having a Winchester pointed at them. It's very funny. Winchester, the choice of rioters and riot breakers. That's an American company right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it started with minor counterfeiting things that moved into mail fraud stuff, and that started turning into big, massive fraud assignments where they're trying to track bank shipments and
like
they're
tax fraud and shit, or
I mean, tax fraud would be a very different thing back in those days.
Well, that's
tax
why I'm
fraud would be like
asking.
hiding a warehouse full of goods and pretending they don't exist. As where like now
right.
it's more about money trails. Like
So it was,
Yeah.
but it's not what we now think of as.
again,
Yeah.
this was a different world to the one we inhabit. Like you're
And
on the
again,
right trail.
That's why I'm asking.
Oh
for
yeah, no.
clarification.
You're absolutely on the right trail, which is why I don't want to be dismissive with any of this. Early 1855, Pinkerton becomes a special agent of the post office to investigate counterfeiting and mail fraud. He is specifically named a special agent and an employee of the U.S. government. By late 1855, he's taking jobs from railways to modest employees for theft and fraud. This is the first time Pinkerton's really called out for working against workers' rights. But at the same time, it is really hard to see it from the individual worker's perspective because this was a white-collar job where the issue was you were stealing ticket money, brah. I get it. You have to feed your
Yeah.
family. I'm not faulting you on that. It's just like, you found the good job in an age where everyone's shitting themselves to death. What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like this one's pretty justifiable, but you can also see the flip side of the coin type of a deal. Shortly hereafter, for those who are history buffs, you'll notice the last I skipped a bullet point here. 1860, Abraham Lincoln hires the Pinkertons.
Before you get to that, I have one thing for 58.
Oh, please do.
Just 'cause We haven't talked about. This is not part of his official stuff, but it's a interesting thing about him.
Oh, I'm down for cool stories. You know me.
In addition to being, I guess, what we call a feminist for hiring, being one of the first to hire women. Freely.
He was insanely progressive for his time.
He was also.
Dude, he gave money to John Brown.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. He was an ardent abolitionist, and in 1858, when John Brown managed to free 11 slaves.
I just want to be
Missouri.
clear. He was the good kind of abolitionist, actually looking for equality, not the send him back to Africa or, no, of course we have to take care of him. Look at him kind of abolitionist. He was the one kind of abolitionist that we like to pretend they all were.
And for those of us who don't immediately recognize that name,
John, you don't recognize the name John Brown?
Led a slave revolt. White guy who led a slave revolt and ultimately was killed by the Confederacy.
oh,
No,
okay.
no, he was executed by the U.S. government.
Wasn't Robert E. Lee the guy who was the one who actually ordered it, though?
When he was a member of the U.S.
Okay,
Army.
I'm sorry. I got some streams. Okay, I had the most important details there, right? No, it was
No.
Robert E. Lee who killed his ass.
Well, no, Robert E. Lee, I believe, caught him. He was arrested and went through the normal court system. I have no idea what the name of the
see, don't feel bad.
executioner
I
is.
know who the guy is, and
But-
I'm
I was
fucking it
gonna
up
say,
left and right.
We have
so-
already discussed my poor historical education.
This is why me and Alan are sitting here with hardcore notes.
And
There's
this
a
is-
reason we put this off another week when I was like, "How are your notes?"
Yeah.
non-existent.
Which is fine. I've come into too many episodes that way, which I'm trying
Well, that
to
was-
not do as much.
There was a miscommunication over who was doing what when. That
But
had to be
okay,
resolved.
so
But anyway.
he gave a huge donation
Yeah.
to Brown.
Well, no, not a huge donation. Well, it's a lot of money back in that time. But he rescued these 11 slaves in Missouri, and then he found out about it, and he raised $500, which is
That's
quite
a lot
bit
of money
back
back
in those
in the
days.
Add like 2
1800s.
zeros
Yeah,
in the
no.
1800s.
Yeah,
like-
and arranged for a train to take them from Chicago to Detroit so they could cross over. His home was also a stop on the Underground Railroad.
Yep.
That is
Alan-
awesome.
Alan Pinkerton is one of those incredibly complex individuals that, like, at different points in your life, you'd want to sit down and have a beer at the bar with him, and at other points in your life, you'd be beating them with your stein at that same bar. Like,
So long as he's fighting in a bar, a good old Irishman's always at home.
Scottish.
Scottish.
Glasgow.
Oh,
Scottish.
Glasgow!
Dude,
I forgot.
He comes from the most wretched hive of scum and villainy to ever exist. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Glasgow's
London's
not
still on
that
the map.
bad.
Never mind.
Glasgow's not that bad.
And I retracted it. London still exists. But yeah, no, yeah, in general, Pinkerton did a really good job of, like, in his personal life, being on the correct side of history. He even did a bunch of undercover work inside of the Confederacy during the Civil War.
Really?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, this guy was great at putting on disguises and just going places he wasn't supposed to be.
Well, I believe it.
Yeah.
That's one of those quintessential detective things that every detective story ends up sharing.
Well, Alan, you said you want to talk about the Boston stuff. That's got some that's got some great use of costumery.
The Boston stuff?
Moving Lincoln.
The Baltimore.
Baltimore. I'm
The
sorry.
yeah.
I
This
get
was the
those
stuff in the
I get those
early
two crossed up
1870s?
in my head a lot.
Is this the one in the early 1870s? You were
No.
saying?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to jump into that, because literally my next bullet point is titled "The Dickery Begins," and it's
Well,
a
no, this
talking
is-
point that starts after
in-
the war.
This is in 1861. The
Oh,
Baltimore
okay.
Plot. Right before before Lincoln is going to go to Washington to be inaugurated. The Pinkerton Agency was investigating rumors of Southern sympathizers possibly like tearing up rail lines leading up
Okay.
to Washington.
Credible, by the way. There
Yeah.
were absolutely plots against Lincoln in the North.
Well,
Yeah. Well, but
Yeah.
the thing was, the first they would just
it was leading up to massive civil war. Of
yeah,
course,
they
there were plots on
they-
both
they-
sides.
They weren't actually investigating with Lincoln at first. They were just investigating sabotage reports on the rail lines.
Okay.
And while doing this, they stumbled across these guys who were actually plotting to murder Lincoln when he was changing trains in Baltimore on his way to D.C.
Okay. So,
So-
he got to stop an actual murder plot against
so-
a incoming
Yeah,
president.
and
Awesome.
bear in mind, this is a very legitimate threat. Like, opinions are very split in the country at this point in time. Lincoln is
yeah.
not very popular in his time. He is
Oh, yeah.
divisive in his
Yeah.
time.
He's the kind of person you either loved or hated.
Okay.
You were
Think the last two presidents. You were only in one of two clubs.
yeah, realistically, yeah.
3 if we count the current.
I mean,
Well,
I've
no,
seen
but-
I've seen enough people that are awake enough and aware enough to be like, okay, yes, Joe is stable. Joe is not going to steer us into rocks. Joe may not actually be capable of correcting anything.
But there is a good portion of the country who
There's people who
again,
just want to
think he's
turn
the
off.
Antichrist.
Yeah, there's people who just want to turn off, but none of that has anything to do with the
Yeah.
Pinkertons or
No,
Lincoln.
No. But no, so he manages to go and he himself informs Lincoln of what's going on. So he manages to arrange for a late night train that'll just go right through Baltimore
Okay.
early.
It also helped that
No
Lincoln really
change
liked this
over,
guy.
Just
yeah. And
were he and
and
Lincoln
they-
buddies?
By the end of things, Pinkerton actually was named the head of the Union Intelligence Service for the first 2 years of its existence.
Yeah.
Interesting.
which I have some stuff on too. But yeah, they also cut telegraph wires when the train was going,
Yep.
so the guys couldn't communicate with each other.
Okay.
See, that's just
The
a
plotters.
bitch for that community for like the month after that.
Until they run new lines.
And
Exactly.
they had Lincoln pose as one of their agents. What?
Okay, were you gonna talk about
Well, let me say it, and then we'll see if he posed as one of their agents, Kate Upton,
Yep.
as her enfeebled brother.
Nice.
I'm Abe.
Yeah, in order to hide his identity.
That's awesome.
Yeah. One thing I did see though was, I don't know. I'm not sure what I don't know if you found anything on this.
I just need to, because I need people to understand why I'm dying laughing.
Okay.
The number of different terms I saw to describe Lincoln's acting in this event ranged from calling him flat out retarded to enfeebled to the mind of a child. I'm thinking
Autistic.
I'm thinking Deputy Dewey from Scary Movie
Oh,
1.
jeez. Yeah.
Oh God.
Hi, I'm Doofy. Hi, I'm Abe. Like, I just see some lanky 6.5 foot tall motherfucker in a stovepipe pulling that
With
shit.
a giant ass beard.
Although to be very clear, I do know this as a point of historic fact. A separate agent, when they were organizing everything before they actually had to move him, was like, sir, I should take your hat. It's very identifiable. They would not let him take the damn hat.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
If you're trying to disguise yourself, you have to get rid
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
things that
I'm
make
sorry.
you
Just
most
that's my favorite
recognizable.
part of this story. This is an awesome,
Okay.
super badass story.
Dude, it was worth it for the agent Doofy reference alone.
That's
I
what I
love
picked.
that.
That's what. After all the ways it was described, all I can come back to is like, he acted like a fucking moron. like no one's using clinical words for obvious reasons. It came from a broken age when you just said things wrong. But
Well, and it was acting, not specific to any specific syndrome.
oh, I know. I just instantly go to the worst place humanly possible with it immediately.
Well,
But
that's our friend Nick.
yeah,
I'm
No.
gonna do my drugs now.
I will say I did find one instance of
Shut up, Trunky.
where because they never actually ended up arresting anybody for this, that there are some historians actually think that the threat was either exaggerated or that Pinkerton straight up made it up.
Oh.
I don't know if you found anything with that.
I saw a little bit about that, but I also saw it being like recirculated in resources that I would describe as uncredible.
Okay.
It's not that I didn't see it; it's that I didn't see it enough in good places.
All right. But yeah, that's what I had for the Baltimore thing.
Yeah, no, the Pinkertons are actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
At least at the start.
Well, do we want to talk about
Alan
the,
Pinkerton seems to have done a lot of badass shit.
Well, you said you had some of the stuff about like the cowboy hunts.
the spy stuff. I got some of the
Oh
spy
yeah,
stuff.
no, go for it, go for it.
We're
Everything else I
pre-Civil
have is
War,
after
right?
war. Go for it,
Okay.
dude. Run.
All right.
Or is
yeah,
this during the Civil War?
during the Civil War.
Pre-Civil War? or
This is during the
dur-
Civil War.
okay,
Start of the
okay.
Civil War, like 1862 is where I'm getting at. He organized the Secret Intelligence Service for the Army of the Potomac,
Okay.
which is the army fighting around Washington and Virginia and all that under General McClellan, who apparently he knew railroad stuff. They knew
Okay.
each other from railroad stuff.
Dude, he knew so many people. He was so well connected.
Yeah. He would set up spy rings behind enemy lines.
They were good at it too.
Yeah. He infiltrated Southern sympathy groups in the North, and they would take runaway slaves and they would interview them to get like intel on what was going on down in the South and kind of compile all that information. And they came up. They produced a lot of really good intel for
Okay,
the army.
I knew it was a fairly common practice to interview runaway slaves as they managed to cross the line to get info from what was
Well,
going
the
on. I
thing
didn't know
is-
the Pinkertons were a major part of
Yeah,
that.
well, that's the big thing is they're taking all this information, they're gathering it up, and they're consolidating it and compiling it and using it to, paint a bigger picture.
Right, well, and as we all know, the more information points you have, the bigger the picture you can paint.
One thing, they kind of had a faux pas here. They kind of played a big part in history. I don't know if you picked up on this.
Probably. I just chose not to focus on it.
We'll see. At one point during the Peninsular Campaign in Virginia in 1862, they did they were doing reconnaissance on. I don't know if it was officially the Army of Northern Virginia yet or not, but that's neither here nor there.
Go with what people will understand
Yeah,
it as.
the Army of Northern Virginia. Although I'm pretty sure Lincoln or Lee was not in command of it yet. I don't think. Again, not relevant to the story.
This is like why I didn't bother writing down the first two names of the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Doesn't matter. It was less than a year.
Well, the history buff in me is just.
Oh no,
I gotta scratch it.
Oh no, I get it,
But-
dude. The imposter syndrome I feel every time we sit down to record. Oh,
Yeah. No. But they reported. They scouted the Army of Northern Virginia and reported on its size. They got it wrong by about double. They reported to General
that-
McClellan that the army facing them was about twice as big as it actually was. So that rather than being this army that the Union Army just grossly outsized, right? It was not even close. McClellan starts getting nervous, orders a halt to the advance, and orders a stop until they can call and ask for more reinforcements. This will actually give the Confederates enough time to actually properly defend Richmond. If they hadn't fucked this up, the Union
that's
Army might have been able to take Richmond in 1862.
See,
Things could have been very, very different.
See, a lot of these official sources tend to be much more positive. This is something that came up, and this is something that came up in the good sources too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is one of those ones where a lot of these very pro Pinkerton overall sources came up with the narrative of, although there were occasionally setbacks with the information gathered by the Pinkerton Agency, overall they were invaluable to the Northern War effort. Which is true, but that buries the lead on any fuck up.
True,
glossing
but
over the
admittedly, though,
faults.
that is the nature of military intelligence.
It
That's
is.
not an unusual
there's a reason.
thing.
There's a reason people claim it's an oxymoron.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting historical anecdote, given what we know now. But it's not something you should blame, accuse them of being.
It wasn't
incompetent
like
or
they
anything.
did it on purpose.
Oh, there's
no.
going to be things like that in my next section where history doesn't have this part recorded, but we can guess a few things.
we can infer from the outcome.
Yeah.
McClellan himself also had a lot to do with how that turned out.
Yeah.
Not just this piece of information, and he fucked up and made the same mistakes repeatedly again and again. So yeah.
Although I do want to emphasize the Pinkertons were very, very good at infiltrating. Arguably, that has always been their best skill as investigators.
You had already mentioned that they managed to get themselves through the war itself by allying with the Northern Union, investigating the Confederates.
They already had a large material wealth, both of resources and just liquid capital. They had been working for the railroads for years at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still based out of Chicago?
Yes and no. They still have an office in Chicago to this day. As to where their specific
Well, I meant at
headquarters
that
are.
time.
Oh, at that point in time, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to follow the timeline here.
That
Let's talk
said-
about the 1860s
That said,
to 70s.
at that point in time, they would have been looking to set up offices in as many states as they could have.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Speaking of which, and speaking of railroads, like you're kind of hitting at major thing they did for the railroads was protecting against robberies and stuff.
Okay.
And
Is this
there
where
was
we
a
get to
number
the cowboy hunting?
yeah, this
more or
is-
less.
Yeah, where
Nice.
basically a lot of bounty hunting for guys who were, pulling shit out west. Got into a bunch of gunfights. Pretty standard. What you would think of as some notables. They went after Jesse James and his brother, I
okay.
think.
Like this is the thing that pisses me off because the Pinkertons are the guys who chased these guys that gave them an adversary that made them legends.
Yep.
The Pinkertons didn't catch like any of these guys.
No, they, on average they caught the guys they went after, but like these big notable guys.
The famous ones are the ones that got away. That's how it always works.
Well, that's why they're famous.
We talk about
Right.
Al Capone for a very specific reason, and it's not the syphilis or him getting locked up. It's all the shit he did in between.
Yeah, we
I
don't
don't know. The syphilis is pretty important to that story.
You know, he wanted his guys to call him Snorky.
I remember that.
Yeah, neither here nor there.
So cowboys.
Yeah, but yeah, Jesse James, Butch Cassidy and his gang, the Wild Bunch.
Okay.
Wasn't Billy the Kid on this list too?
I didn't see
Probably
Billy the Kid on the list.
Time, but
Could be. The other one I had was the Reno Gang,
Yes.
the Reno Brothers Gang, which is notable for they were responsible for the first ever train robberies in American history.
The
interesting.
first ever moving train robberies. This is a big deal and a huge difference. That was a
Okay.
paradigm shift in the industry of train robbery. The idea of being able to attack a armored moving vehicle at high speeds was such a foreign concept to people. Like, no one had any fear of the train in motion. You feared coming to a town you didn't fucking know and who could be on that platform. They changed the fucking game. They could be a topic, like just talking Wild West gangs.
Yeah.
They're a fucking segment. Like I know the Reno gang. Sorry, Sorry, you mentioned a group that I'm relatively familiar with, so it's like, oh, fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that would be a cool one. I'm drawing a blank on the cowboy. I was thinking of Doc Holliday.
Yes.
Thank you.
Famous lawman partnered with Wyatt Earp.
Yes.
Also notorious drunk and gambler.
But started out on the wrong side of that until he ran
So did Earp.
into Wyatt Earp.
Oh, so did Earp. Him
Yeah,
and his
no,
brothers were cattle rustlers.
I
A
remember.
lot of those guys, the
Yeah.
lawmen, started
Well,
out.
to be
on the
perfectly
other side.
frank, how do you catch a animal? You watch those animals and you emulate their behavior.
It's that old thing about set a thief to catch a thief.
I feel it's like in those.
They already know the tactics.
I feel it's
Yeah.
like in far northern Alaskan tribes. It's like, yeah, I got the Malamute and I got a wolf mix here. The wolf mix, yeah, it's a little more dangerous, but this one I'm not gonna have to butcher in the woods to stay alive. Like, there's a little bit of a difference here.
Yeah.
Talking about this for a couple of minutes. Those Irish coffees have gone through me.
Fair enough. Honestly, this is unless you've got another point that you really want to bring in, because I'm thinking this is going to be a two-parter the way this is flowing.
Okay. The only other thing I want to bring in that's about this time would be the database. Mentioning the database.
Yes. No, that's a good idea, especially because that has a huge impact on later law enforcement history. We're technically still using it.
Mm-hmm. No, they the Pinkertons were the first ones to create what we consider a major national criminal database. Because before this, in order to get out of a crime, all you really had to do was just leave the jurisdiction, whether that was a state line or even sometimes just a county line.
Dude, you didn't even have to leave the jurisdiction. Walk into a town, murder everyone, leave for a day, come back tomorrow when another trade caravan comes in. So long as you're not the first one back in town, they have no questions.
Yeah, and if you're walking around and nobody knows what you look like, there's no, if you don't ever have your picture taken, unless you've got the most distinguishable face on the entire fucking planet, nobody's going to recognize you.
Now, I might be wrong about this. This might have actually come from a small independent police force, and the Pinkertons picked up on it. But I do believe the Pinkertons were actually the first to incorporate photographing apprehended individuals into their bag of tricks.
That was certainly, I don't know they were the absolute first, but they were certainly
They were
first
definitely
ones to do it
early
on-
adopters.
They were the first ones to do it on a large scale. The biggest thing with them is it was a national database. It was people from all across the country in one place, constantly maintained, where they had mugshots. They also had, just basic physical descriptions like you had before added on to that.
If I may, you brought up a good point, and it's something I want to touch on before we get too far from it.
Yeah.
You point out that it was a national database. Now, when the Pinkerton Detective Agency was first founded, it was founded as the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. It absolutely was not national. They barely had enough force to cover Chicago. And Chicago was not what it is now. It was like 6,000 people at that point in time. Like, it was barely fucking
Little
anybody.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. This is like the city is still built on a boardwalk era of Chicago. Like, it's still a swamp, directly under street level.
So it's within the first 3 or 4 times it burned down into the swamp and they rebuild.
Dodge City is bigger than Chicago at this point in time.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, people have not gotten out of Dodge yet. But the idea of national branding was critically important to Alan Pinkerton and selling this idea of not having borders and being able to go anywhere.
He wanted it
This
to
is a
grow.
further expansion of that idea of we are anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, talking about this national database they're putting together, is this when they start doing things like fingerprinting and stuff?
Not fingerprinting yet, but
Hadn't quite been invented yet.
yeah.
Okay, I wasn't quite sure on the timing.
But
of that.
it was basically mugshots, general physical descriptions of distinguishing characteristics.
Sketch artists were incorporated, although that was not specifically a new trick, but they really went whole hog on
Yeah,
it.
and then things like listing all their previous known arrests, known associates, and like areas of expertise, criminal
Finally
expertise.
keeping track of these details that are useful to law enforcement across the state.
Which all of it sounds fairly basic, but again,
It was new for the
yeah,
time.
none of this had been done before. these were paradigm shifts to policing.
They may have kept track on a local level, but they didn't share that with anyone. There was no major database connecting it all together.
Even then, say wherever your Hall of Records is, say it catches fire, was a big problem back in the day.
Yep. It's all gone.
Yeah, say the sheriff who used to take you in when you were a drunk teenager and wrote all of those and had them sealed up, say they died of a heart attack last year and the place caught fire this June.
Clean record?
Well, some things are gonna change.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a very, very different time.
Yeah, but no, like we said before, the biggest part of this was it was all across the entire country, this one centralized thing, and it would remain the most thorough, detailed criminal database until the FBI comes along in the 20s and 30s.
I believe
thought it was
it existed in the 20s under a different name, but I believe when it
40s?
became
Hoover took the job in the late 30s, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I was about to say I think 38. I'm probably wrong, but I want
the late 30s when Hoover came along and the FBI.
Either way, it was Hoover.
Yeah.
In any case, the organization existed before it was formally called the FBI. Alan's right.
Well,
the organization we're talking about starts in the 20s,
they were
forms
agents.
in the 30s, is what we know it as now by the 40s.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, no, the entire basis for the FBI's original criminal profile, which they built everything off. Yep. Technically, parts of the Pinkerton original database are still in use. Technically.
I believe that.
Yeah.
If it was still valid, good information.
They still keep including it when they've done updates. Like you can pull up the old records in new digital formats. Like they've preserved a lot of it, so it is extant in our current legal enforcement framework. Like
it is minimally historically applicable.
Yeah, no, like this is one of those things where like I could almost see it being important enough to us culturally to include in the Library of Congress, but then I can also see national security being like, fuck you, it's our documents.
Well, I mean, the older
quite
ones.
a bit of that is actually accessible through the Library of Congress, but
or the National Archives.
Or the National Archives, yeah.
You should follow and subscribe us at InfoConfused at Twitter.com and Informed and Confused on YouTube.com. Like, follow, subscribe, click all of the things. They're interactive.
Thank you all for joining us this week again, and we are Info and Confused. I'm Ben.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Nick. Bye.
There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things, history and science and some crazy shit, talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird-ass show.